Is we on? We on? Can you can you hear that? Yeah, I can hear that. Whoa, that's loud. Okay. Well, my name's Colin Mulberg. I'm a director of Colin Mulberg Consulting, and I will be hosting the presentations in this theatre today. And welcome to the 30th edition of the Museums and Heritage Show. They were determined to do that in person, so we're all here together at the same time, in person, having a show. Apologies to people at the back who are having to stand, and also if you can't quite hear, because I know there's a lot of background noise, but we are going to record the session, and so put that online afterwards, so if there's a few bits you miss, you'll be able to catch up on that. We will be having about 10 minutes at the end for Q&As. Because it's so noisy and we want to get on, and it's now 11 o'clock and we can officially start, I'm going to hand over to Merrin, who is going to introduce herself but also talk about her presentation and others on getting the most out of ticketing.
Okay. Hi everyone. It's really nice to be doing this in person. There's been so many online sessions and it feels a bit weird to be looking out at all your faces, but also really lovely. So I'm going to just begin. So I'm doing a bit of an intro to Art Fund and our ticketing platform, Art Tickets. And then I'm going to hand over for the juicy bits to Anne from Audience Agency and Sassy from Bronte Parsonage, who's going to give us a bit of a case study of how they've found using the platform, because I think that tells you a lot more than I can about the system. So, sorry, can everybody hear me okay? I'm standing close enough. Yeah. So I'm just going to begin with a really brief intro to Art Fund, who we are and what we do. So we are a charity that raises money to support museums. So we're probably best known for our National Art Pass. We have 130,000 members who use their National Art Pass to visit museums. And they can use their pass to get into museums for kind of free entry, 50% off. All of that money goes back into our program of support for museums. So we have a program of grants, including kind of acquisition grants. So we've helped a lot of museums to kind of collect works of art for their collections. We also give grants to museums to kind of support curatorial work, exhibitions, touring, and we support museums through kind of promotion and marketing as well. So we've kind of got a really primed audience that we can sort of promote all of our museum partners back to, and there's kind of a really nice circle of support there. But today we're going to be talking about Art Tickets. So this is one of the ways that we support museums, and this is a free-to-use ticketing platform. We developed it in 2018. And it really is kind of designed by museums for museums. So we kind of saw that there was a bit of a gap in the market for small to medium-sized museums who were maybe using kind of third-party sites or having to create workarounds with systems, and also then missing out on some of the data that they could get from that ticketing as well, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Art Tickets is completely free to use, so we now have over 200 museums using the platform. It's really quick and easy to get set up. I'll be sharing at the end kind of what the next steps are if you're interested in kind of getting on the platform. And it's also essentially really easy to use. So we worked really closely with a pool of museums who, some of them are run by volunteers, have really small teams, and we wanted to make sure that we created a platform that was genuinely kind of really easy to kind of get set up on, get started, and to run your tickets on. So as I said, we have over 200 museums on the platform now. It massively grew over the pandemic. It has a time ticketing functionality. So obviously in 2020, that was kind of crucial for a lot of museums to kind of get open and get visitors back in the door. And as well as kind of joining Art Tickets, we can also then kind of share your exhibitions, your events, tell people about your venues, and kind of you get some free promotion as part of that partnership as well. And we can help you reach our audience of kind of 130,000 National Art Pass members. So there's kind of a few additional benefits to sort of using the platform as well as it being free. One of the key things for us when we were kind of thinking about starting this ticketing platform was actually that a lot of museums are kind of missing out on data that perhaps some other cultural venues like theatres kind of have at their fingertips already. So that was definitely kind of one of the reasons that we started the platform in the first place. Through Art Tickets, we kind of wanted it to be really easy for you to kind of start getting some of that data. So first of all, it's really easy to get opt-in data. So when people sort of buy a ticket, they can opt in to hear from your museum and sign up to your e-newsletter. And then we also developed an analytics dashboard with a few bits of data at a glance as well, which has been really helpful for museums to kind of start getting a feel for kind of what they can find out about their audiences. So you can see here's just a bit of a screenshot. You can have access to postcodes, and for some museums that was kind of the first time they were seeing where people were kind of booking from. It also pulls through from Google Analytics, so you can also see kind of the source that people have booked from, and start kind of tracking some of your marketing as well. And you can also get gift aid data as well. So if your ticket is gift aidable, it's really easy to kind of get people to opt in on that, and then get that data to be able to claim that back. So we wanted to take that a step further, and we knew that to do that, the best people to kind of work with would be audience agency. A lot of our partners are using the platform, are already sort of working with audience agency, are using Audience Finder, which is free to use. So we wanted to make that even easier so that people who are perhaps doing kind of surveys and using Audience Finder already can now have their ticketing data kind of feeding into that as well, and have even more data at their fingertips. So obviously, probably preaching to the choir, but having that data can kind of really help you to kind of develop marketing strategies, business planning, and also just kind of get to know your audiences much, much better. So I'm now going to hand over to Anne, who's going to talk about that in a lot more detail than I can. So bear with me while I swap presentations.
Thank you, Merrin. It's a very nice, clear introduction there. I'm now going to make it not clear. No, right. Sorry. Excuse the cheesy title. Art Tickets and Audience Finder equals success. Possibly, maybe? Question mark. We hope so. I'm really excited about this new partnership because we've been anxious at the Audience Agency for quite a long time by how many museums and heritage organisations have been using ticket selling systems, which mean that you don't necessarily get your hands on the full value of the data. So, you know, don't want to mention any well-known commercial organisations that sell event tickets, but actually, you know, you don't get the full benefit of the data. And what we love about Art Tickets is not only is it free and a brilliantly a system that's made for the sector, but of course it's very user-centred in the way that it's been made. It's for museums and so on, and that's very much the spirit in which we like to think Audience Finder works as well. So I'm just going to tell you very quickly about Audience Finder. So we are the Audience Agency. We're also a charity. We do a lot of stuff around cultural engagement and participation, lots and lots of audience research and analysis. We run Audience Finder, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. We also run something at the moment called the Participation Monitor, which is a sort of a bi-monthly survey of the population, telling us how people are feeling about coming back to venues and so on, but also looking at issues like cost of living, how that's impacting people and so on. Can everyone hear me over there? Can you hear? Excellent. I can barely hear myself, so you know, just if you go like that, I'll know. Is that okay? Thank you. Anyway, so that's us. We're big into collaborating. We like to bring people together to make the most of things, including and importantly data. We're also, goodness, which way do I go with this? Oh yes, we're also a bunch of nice people. Two of them, in fact, my lovely colleagues Jane and Nathan are here. I'm going to make Nathan stand up in a minute because he knows quite a lot more about Audience Finder than I do. So he's the person to talk to if you have practical questions. So the Audience Agency Art Tickets, as I say, super excited. We're very well aligned, I think, values-wise, but also, of course, in terms of what we do. We're really interested to make sure that that data that you're collecting, if you are already using Art Tickets, that that data that you're collecting is working hard enough for you. And I'm going to show you in a moment what that actually looks like. We're also planning to do some more things together. We've done some cohort working around museums, trying to make the most of using that data as a collective as well, and there'll be some more things like that happening later this year. We've got an onboarding event happening soon. Have we got a date for that yet, Nathan? We will have soon, for those of you who are already taking part. Right, so what on earth, for those of you who don't know, what is Audience Finder? This is what we say about it. It's snappily called a collaborative data aggregation analysis and support service. Essentially, so we take data from about 1,000 organisations across the UK, aggregate it and try and give it back to you in some kind of useful form. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So we're funded at the moment by Arts Council England, Creative Scotland and Arts Council Wales to do that. So that helps us to build this big pot of national data as well, so we can see what's going on with audiences much more broadly. So hopefully it's useful to single organisations, to groups of organisations, but of course it's really useful for us to be able to build that national picture as well. We're also trying to do that at the moment. We're having a go, piloting, doing that in Germany and in Sweden and in Canada as well. So hopefully in the next few years we'll also have some really interesting international indicators and metrics that we can compare to. So how does it work? So as I said, there's a big pot. We put data into it from a number of different sources. The key ones are ticketing data, as you know, as we've been talking about. But of course, many of you will know that we also do a completely standardized survey that you can slightly custom for your organization. Standard survey works the same way across, it's actually 1,167 organizations in the UK use that survey. So, you know, lots of ways of being able to compare your results with others like you, regionally, what you actually do and so on. It's all free, of course. We put that data in the pot. There's also some new online data goes in, and makes the cogs whirl. We then append, and this is the important bit here, we add in some extra information based on where your audiences come from that tell us what they're like, what kinds of arts and cultural interests do they have, how does that map out across the rest of their lives. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And we then append one of 10, in fact now 20 segments onto who your ticket bookers are. And then out of that, as I say, if you put your data in, you get lots of personalized tools. You can look at averages and benchmarks and maps, and I'll show you some in a moment. Of course, we can do some deep diving. We can kind of help you with a bit more detailed report than is in the standard dashboard. And of course, we also get this really useful asset to help us understand what's going on regionally, nationally, and of course with certain groups in the population and so on. And there's lots of support that comes with it. As I say, Nathan is head of that, so he's also the man to ask about all of those things. There he is. Okay, so Audience Spectrum, I mentioned this. Audience Spectrum is a super useful tool, and in a way, it's the thing that is the most important extra thing you can do. If you're an Art Tickets user plugged into Audience Finder, you also get Audience Spectrum profiling as standard. So suddenly you can see, of your ticket bookers, you can see that they are one of 10, in fact, as I say, now 20 different audience types. And that's really helpful because we give you lots of information about the propensity of those kinds of audiences to do different things. So I'm going to show you some examples of how that works in a moment. The way it actually works is that we hold a database of all UK households, and when someone buys a ticket, we tag in and say, aha, that person's booked in that way. And then we use lots of different data sources to understand the propensity of each of those households to behave in one of 20 different ways. We kind of break them into 3 different groups. So these sort of high engaged groups, super engagers, we'll see lots of those in our venues, mid engagers. These people really are sort of, they're less kind of interested in the contemporary by and large, very interested in doing culture, have slightly more kind of conservative tastes, tend to live a little bit more likely to live outside major urban centres, smaller towns, suburbs of suburbs, and so on. And then our less engaged groups, who definitely also do come and do things in our venues, but less often, and again, from our point of view, this is, if we want to really think about being more inclusive and working in a more productive ways with our communities, these are the people that we really want to concentrate our efforts on, and to try and work out what it is that we could do better to attract them. As I say, rather excitingly, we've just launched 10 new segments. So if you're working using the segments in a kind of granular way, very tactically, the 10 extra segments are going to be really, really helpful and useful. Nathan's nodding. If you want to know more about how, he can tell you. So some of you will find that you only have 3 or 4 segments that appear a lot in your organisation. So this extra layer of data is super useful. Have a look at our website for all the details about those new ones. And excitingly, here I am to show you for the first time some data from Art Tickets bookers. So we've mentioned that about 10% of Art Tickets users are now putting their data into Audience Finder, their ticketing data, and this is what we can tell you about them. So there you see, the solid line is the Art Tickets bookers. The middle line is all Audience Finder bookers. And the last line in each of those groupings is the population. So you can see Art Tickets bookers are officially very much in that metroculturals grouping. Metroculturals are a very particular kind of arts attender, super well-informed about arts and culture. Lots of people work in the cultural sector in metroculturals as well. But doing quite well in all of the groups. It's interesting to see there is some representation across all of the segments. Interestingly, as you know, if you're an Art Tickets user, you'll know you can get things like you'll know what your average party size is. We can now compare that with all sorts of other art forms, places, and so on. I can tell you that for this group of organisations who are already Art Tickets users in Audience Finder, the average party size is exactly 2, and the average ticket price is exactly $6.99. So there you go, something to conjure with. Right, so just to come on to so I'm not going to go on at length, because we're going to hear from Sassy in a moment, and she's talking from a really brilliant practical point of view about the Bronte parsonage. But I will just say there are lots of tools associated with Audience Finder, lots of different ways you can use the data. I'm not going to go into all those details now, Nathan, but just a quick overview of how some of these tools can help Art Tickets users. There are actually lots of different kinds of functionality. I'm going to focus on these ones related to Audience Spectrum, for example. So this is the profile of a venue in the sort of southwest central region. And if you can see there, here's something really interesting, that they can see that they do particularly well for their Bridget Riley exhibition. They did particularly well with a group called Experience Seekers, who we know are highly engaged, but much younger than the average highly engaged member of audiences. So actually, I made this figure up, by the way, in case you can guess what venue that is. That's not entirely what their actual data looks like, but I'm using it as a good example. So they might say, aha, so our gallery can reach much younger audiences through programming in certain ways, for example. So that's what you might draw from something like that. Or if we look at their scores for their scores, in fact, for family audience, for dormitory dependables and for family audiences, I think that's slightly dropped off, the colour has slightly dropped off there. But if you can see under that first circle, in fact, there are lots of dormitory dependables in their area, and they're slightly under-penetrating dormitory dependables. So if they really want to think about broadening the diversity, the social diversity of their audiences, they could really focus both on dormitory dependables and on their on a group called Frontline Families, with whom actually who are particularly interested in family offer. So that's giving them some clues about, if we wanted to change our audience, which direction would we go in? We can also look, this is another organisation, this is the same organisation, I think. We can also look at, where does their audience come from? Could they focus their efforts in different areas? Who are they serving? The outer line is the regional authority. The inner line is their catchment area. And the dots are showing the distribution of their audiences. So lots of clues there about how they could make connections, build partnerships, where their audience is distributed, and how that relates to the other factors around them. So how can tools help Art Tickets users? Audience spectrum profiles, as we've seen, are important. Who are our audiences? Who could they be? Where are they? We can see, for example, here we go, this is our audiences of a venue in Southampton. That's their distribution of audiences. But that's all audiences in the region, giving them some clues again about where they could be taking their efforts, who could they be looking at, and so on. Excuse me for whizzing through this. You will be able to have a look at this online afterwards, or talk to Nathan. And also, we can also have a look at what does your area look like. So this is a profile of Southampton, looking at the different spectrum groups and how they distribute across Southampton. So we can see there are lots of those younger experience seekers, this time represented by a blue, who live across the middle of Southampton. So we can sort of see, you can see what your area looks like, what kinds of potential audiences are around you, whether or not they're in your audiences. So lots of different ways we can help you. Once you've got your data in Audience Finder, we can help you to locate and identify your different audiences, identify potential, segment your user groups. If you use this information in connection with other data that you have, you can see how your audiences break down. Adjust your tactics, lots of clues there, especially if you do the survey as well. You can understand not just what, but why. Reset and monitor your goals. Are you achieving what you wanted to? Keep abreast of change. Don't forget, we do a lot of analysis of the big national data sets. And if you want to know what's going on more broadly, we've always got new evidence coming out. So you can see what's happening elsewhere. How does what happened in my organisation compare elsewhere? And finally, do ask us for help with specific challenges. We've got a really engaged user group of people that ask each other questions. And there's Nathan and his team. So thank you very much. Now, more importantly, we're going to hear from Sassy, who's really doing it. Right. Swap with me.
Just getting up the presentation. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Sassy, and I am the Programme Officer for the Bronte Parsonage Museum. And today I'm going to talk about why we use art tickets and the Audience Finder. So when the pandemic hit, we were closed for the longest period in history, and it really hit us hard because we are a paid entry museum and we survive off this. We were really worried that we wouldn't bounce back and be able to open, but we did. And the first thing that was on our minds was making sure that our staff and our visitors were safe. We introduced time ticketing through Art Tickets, and it was a feature that we couldn't introduce directly ourselves. We didn't have the capacity on our website. We don't have the funds to be able to create a new platform. So we turned to Art Fund and to Art Tickets. And this was a platform that really understood our needs. It was really easy to set up. It was really easy to understand. And we got our visitor experience team on board with us straight away. Art Tickets really provide a personal touch as well. They have how-to guides and documents that you can use as you set it up. And they're really easy to talk to. You get that kind of first-hand personal experience. So it was brilliant, and we found it a really smooth transition to use. It's really flexible as well. So after reopening, we started selling 15-minute slots because this was the best way that we felt that our visitors and our staff would be safe. We're also a really small museum, so you can see by how the Bronte Parsonage looks. It's hard to get visitors in and out of different rooms, and the flow can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming, especially just coming out of the pandemic. So Art Tickets flexibility really helped us in adhering to those precautions, but also adhering to our wants and needs of visitors. Now we're kind of coming out of that. We're moving to different time tickets. So actually we're just doing morning and afternoon, but it's really brilliant to still be able to use that and regiment it. So for example, if we've got a school or a group in and we know there's going to be lots of people in the rooms at some points, we can regulate and block out when we're going to have tickets sold or we know we're going to be really busy. Art Fund's really brilliant as well because of gift aid. So previously, a lot of visitors would miss the fact that they could gift aid tickets, and we were losing out on about 25% of money that we could get back from the government. But gift aid is a feature on Art Tickets that is so handy, and we're seeing so many of our visitors use that now. So it's really beneficial from a financial point of view as well. It is a free service, but it's got limitations, but what we really love about Art Tickets and Art Fund is that they listen to feedback. For example, we provided feedback that when we were getting daily reports in of who was buying our tickets, they were being presented in order of when that person was buying the ticket. We said that that wasn't helpful for our visitor experience team. It became quite complex to understand who was coming in when. And so they listened to us, and they now give our data and our daily tickets in time order, so when that person was actually coming into the museum. It's really easy to digest, and it's really easy and brilliant to work with a company who listen to us and give us that great feedback, and we have a brilliant back and forth with them. So one of our main positives of this is our data collection. The benefits of it are really important for a small museum like us. As an Arts Council MPO, we are now having a duty to report on our audiences and use our data to think about research, to think about how we're evaluating our museum, how are we progressing the audiences that we work with. And these two organizations are helping us do that. Art Fund Tickets connecting to the audience finder. It's amazing because we have an audience dashboard which we can go to all the time and have a little look at who's coming into our museum, what times are they coming into our museum, how far in advance are people booking. All of this data that before we really didn't have, we now have at our fingertips, and it's such an excellent service to be able to use. It's also great because we can compare our own data to the average statistics in our area, but also the UK. And this is helpful to think about our reach. So actually, before this service, we weren't really sure of the younger audiences we were connecting with. And you can see here, this is the example of a graph that's proved that we weren't connecting with an early years audience. So as the program officer, I'm putting in initiatives for us to do Bronte Babies events, sensory mornings for 0 to 4-year-olds. And this has been crucial in helping us kind of pinpoint who we're not working with and who we'd like to work with in the future. Thinking about the future as well, there's lots of things that we're aspiring to. As the program officer, I'd really like to get our events tickets up there. Currently, they're separate and they're not used on this service. But I think by putting all of our events up there, we're going to kind of create a streamlined service. Art Fund and Art Tickets have a really beautiful aesthetic that people know all across the UK. And it's really nice. It just looks good. And it looks good on our website as well. And we really want to kind of implement that with all of the tickets that we're selling. And I think we can then start mapping data from our events as well. So who's coming to our events, they might be different to who's coming into our museum on a daily basis. So just basically, as a small museum, we really benefit from it. And I think lots of museums would, because of that data-led culture that we're all striving to at the minute. Thanks very much for listening to me, and I'll pass back over to Merrin now. Thank you.
Everyone's taller than me. Thank you, Sassy and Anne. Yeah, I think Sassy has just described way better than I could have, kind of what it's like to use Art Tickets and, yeah, how it can help you to kind of get to know your audiences better. So I think we now have time for questions.
We do have time for questions, and I have a mic that I'll be wandering around with. So anyone's got any questions? We have a few minutes. Right there at the back. Is it you? Put it up close, yeah?
Hello. Hi. Is it easy to integrate into the website? So we use WordPress, and at the minute we use Eventbrite, which is not ideal, but it's easy to put the code onto our webpage. How does it work for Arctic?
So, is it easy to integrate into websites, for example, WordPress, or using Eventbrite?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And so when we developed Art Tickets, one of the part of the reason that we developed it was, as I said, because we found that so many museums kind of either didn't have ticketing solutions or were using kind of so many different platforms. But what we also discovered was that museums are using so many different platforms for their websites, for their CRMs, for their till system. So to ensure that Art Tickets kind of was available for as many museums as possible to use, we decided not to go down the integration route. So the way that Art Tickets works is that you would have a unique URL for your ticket page. So you can kind of embed that URL in your Book Now tickets, and then it would kind of take you off to the Art Tickets page to kind of do that booking. And then when you're on the Art Tickets page as well, kind of once you're there, we designed it so that if somebody is, for example, kind of going to book a general admission ticket, they'll also be able to kind of see what events are on that day, and be able to kind of book other tickets and add other tickets to their basket as well.
Right. Hi, thanks very much. Rick Bearbrusky, Sunshine Coast, Australia. Do you have a strategy to drive audiences to Art Ticket, and what's that promotional strategy look like?
So do you have a strategy to drive people towards Art Tickets and promote it?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, part of our support for museums is the promotion of our partner venues. So we drive people to Art Tickets through artfund.org, so our own website where our members and kind of our wider audiences kind of visit to find out what's on, where to go. So if a museum is using Art Tickets, we will drive people to their Art Tickets page to book. But we've also launched a new website called Unbooked. So during the last kind of lockdown, or like coming out of the last couple of lockdowns, we found that a lot of kind of the big ticket exhibitions were really selling out. So we saw an opportunity to launch a website called Unbooked, which served people specifically tickets for Art Tickets museums, and would show them where they can book and what's available and what's on in kind of their local area. We also have kind of an ongoing strategy of kind of partnerships and how we will be kind of pushing people and driving audiences to Art Tickets as well.
Hi. Can I ask, can you do free tickets through the system, and can you take donations in the booking system?
Okay, is it free tickets, did you say? Yeah, can you handle free tickets and donations?
Yep, so yeah, you can use Art Tickets for free tickets, paid tickets, and there's a few ways that we can handle donations. So you can either add a top-up donation to your ticket. So for example, you've got a general admission where you want to add 10% donation to get the gift aid. Or there's also a top-up donation option at the checkout. So that's kind of more your sort of, do you want to add on £3, £5, or another amount? And through Art Tickets, the other thing that we developed through the pandemic was actually a donation-only journey. So again, where museums are kind of maybe needing to take donations through their website and maybe don't have that functionality, or using another third-party system that kind of takes a commission, we developed a sort of donation-only journey. So if you've got that donate button on your website, you can just link to just to be able to make a donation. You don't need to buy a ticket.
Any more questions from the floor? Anyone? No, I think that could be it. Okay, well, a big thank you to all our speakers.
Thank you. And if anyone does have any questions, we're literally just on that stand there, so come see us.
And before you go, you have 5 things to do. One of them is, if you've got any further questions, please come up and chat to the speakers. The other one is, if you have an idea or even a half idea for a session that you'd like to share with the sector for the Museum and Heritage Show next year, please come and see me and we could chat about your idea. It doesn't have to be fully formed, because this only works if we all share what we're doing. Please come and see me if you want to have a chat about improving the visitor experience for your venue, but I'm also around in the show tomorrow, so you might be able to catch me there. What else? Oh yes, drop a line to the Museum and Heritage Show. info@museumandheritage.com. That's a pretty easy one. info@museumandheritage.com. And the fifth one applies to everyone. Can you please clear the room for the next session? Thank you very much again, and come and chat to our speakers if you've got further questions. Thank you. Next session at 12.